let's talk about how we're misusing credit in America.
First of all, people think credit is money. Start there. It's not. The most dangerous thing in my wallet today, Joe, is my American Express Black Card. Because this thing here, and it's sexy, and it looks nice, and it's pretty, there's no limit on it. But that's not even a credit card. This is a charge card, which means in 30 days, I got to pay the whole balance. A lot of people get in trouble. You start seeing celebrities in their bankruptcies and people who won the lottery, whatever. You see this credit card stuff because they thought this was an extension of their wallet. It's not meant to be an extension on your annual compensation.
Hey there, buddy. Welcome to a live recording of the Stacking Benjamin show. And let me get the crew up here. We are just about ready to roll. We have a hard stop in 60 minutes. So you're just going to hear us as we go. So we're going to get this thing rolling. Doug, you ready to do it?
Can I keep dancing like you?
Yeah. I think
First,
you got to
while I do
it, shift your feet like you're in old white guy.
The two-step left and right. Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
3, 2, 1. Live from the basement of the YouTube headquarters, it's the Stacking Benjamin Show. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug, and are there drawbacks when you retire early? One popular publication says you should think twice before retirement because reasons. We'll dive in with the woman who says you can afford any retirement, just not all the retirement, Paula Pant. And the guy who says it's in your best interest to plan a great retirement, Jesse's girl Cramer. That's the real name on the birth certificate.
What are you doing?
And also the guy who's all about squeezing the most out of that retirement dream, OG. Not only will they share their thoughts on retirement planning, but they'll also lock horns in our epic year-long trivia battle. And now, a guy who's helping you battle better with your money, it's Joe Saul-Sehy.
Hey, everybody. Happy Friday. We're going to call it Wing It Friday as Doug just goes
making it up.
Way off script on the open today. But today, hopefully, is way off script because I was inspired. I was inspired by this piece that I read. And actually, I was inspired because I'm going to be speaking at Retire Meet in Seattle next week. And as I was researching and diving into my presentation, it brought me back to the case against early retirement. Why would somebody want early retirement? Well, we're glad these people haven't retired yet because we have them here to comment today and talk about the case against early retirement. Oh, geez, here. How are you, man?
I'm just living the dream, 3 espressos at a time.
He sounds like he hasn't started on the espresso train yet, though. It's weird how a guy could have 3 of them and still
living the dream.
Not quite 3 in.
Hold on. Let me read my script. I am living the dream, 3 espressos at a time.
In your very large mug, your incredibly large mug. Speaking of large mug, Jesse Cramer's here.
Some weight, but...
Hey, Joe, do you say you're speaking at Retire Meet next week?
I am. Yes.
Is that MEET? Retire Meet?
MEAT.
Just checking.
With all the meats.
Not a singles bar for retired people.
It is MEET in
Hey,
Seattle.
I'm living till 95 because I go to retire meet every night after work.
I had that way about 10 to 4, so that when they open at 4 o'clock, I'm there.
Mm-hmm.
All the other old people. Good
Oh,
seeing you too, Jesse.
Good to see you. I'm excited for today.
I am excited too, and I can't wait to get your take, as I can't wait to get this woman's take. Paula Pant's here. How are you?
I actually love the concept of retire meat. Like, you think about the carnivore community, the keto community, the lion diet by Michaela Peterson. I mean, you've got all of these very meat-centric diets, and you've also got the retirement planning community, and these are like, just why not have that crossover?
The
You know?
lion diet.
Oh yeah, the lion diet. It's
I
where you
ain't
only
lying. Is that
Yeah.
where you just fib all day long?
No. Well,
No?
it might be, but you also only eat ruminant meat from ruminant animals.
Oh my goodness! But
Yeah.
now we have to look up.
Use a shorter word.
Animals with bigger animals with multiple stomachs.
Right.
Okay.
Use the
Smaller.
word ruminant in a sentence, so that would be
Like more
cows.
specific.
Only from
Yes.
cows.
Like you eat
Yeah,
cows.
pretty much you eat cows.
Goats.
Yeah.
Oh.
Goats.
Basically, you eat cow.
Don't
What-
goats
what is
have
the
multiple
tech-
stomachs?
What's the technical definition of ruminant, actually? Ruminant animals, a ruminant digestive system, cattle, all domesticated and wild bovines, goat, sheep, giraffes, deer,
of
gazelles,
course.
and antelopes.
Oh, giraffe is
Um,
the delicacy that most people have never had.
Oh, they belong to the suborder Ruminantia, and they're able to acquire nutrients from plant-based food by fermenting it in a specialized stomach prior to digestion. Principally
Ruminorium is
through
the
microbial
Latin
action.
conjugation.
You know, that noise, Joe, our listeners running for the door right now.
I was going to say, Doug, I hate to break up this rumination on the ruminant. Yeah, I'm on fire. We got a great show. We're going to talk about the case against early retirement today. We've got Jesse here, Paula's here, OG's here, Doug's here, and at the halfway point, we've got our trivia question. It's week 2 of the new trivia challenge for 2025. Who's going to come out on top today? We're going to find out that. But the first thing we're going to find out is who the sponsors are who make this free, so you don't have to pay for it. Let's say hello to them, and then we're on to talking early retirement. 3, 2, 1. All right, today's piece was inspired. Actually, originally, it was inspired by Wes Moss's book, What the Happiest Retirees Know. And in the intro, as I was leafing through the book, creating my presentation for Retire Meet, all the Retire Meets. See, I can't get out of my head now. As I was leafing through it, I was reading the introduction again, and Wes was talking about how this particular piece in 2019 really upset him. Like, he was not happy with this piece. So I went back and I realized I had read this before. I don't know. OG, had you read this piece before? What the case against early retirement?
I hadn't read it. No, and
Jesse?
if I did, I didn't.
Paul?
No, hadn't read it. Nope.
Nope,
No.
first time.
So let's dive into this. Now, obviously, all three of you have audiences that are people that either A, have retired, are hoping to retire, are hoping to retired, are hoping to retire at some day. Jesse, you're in a financial planning firm working with people chasing that. OG, you've worked with people trying to get there. This idea of the case of early retirement, the first thing it goes over, Paula, the first thing it goes over is health. It's
Right.
like, no, early retirement's bad for your health. You shouldn't do it.
Right. And, they point out, you can't actually, the ability to study this is a little bit limited in that you can't just randomly assign certain people to retire and certain people to not. But there have been unintentional pseudo-social experiments in which, for example, a government of a given country might temporarily incentivize people to retire later. And in doing so, create a cultural shift in which people retire later for a limited period of time. And then the government removes the incentive and behavior changes again. And so you kind of have these social experiments where you do sort of get something like a control group and a variable group. And what they saw is that by virtue of retiring later, you tend to live longer. And so a lot of that's attributed to you're socializing more, you're keeping your brain sharper. Apparently, work is good for your health.
We're gonna dive into all those. Jesse, do you buy that if you work longer, you're going to probably live longer?
I don't know if I know enough, but I can tell you, I was reminded a lot of the holiday heart attack syndrome, if you guys are familiar with that, or like, because I was doing some research on the side too, and maybe I'm mixing up my my phrasing, but there's one thing out there called holiday heart, which is simply that when you drink a lot, your heart has more arrhythmias and you kind of have some palpitations or some tremors or something like that. But then also there is also this idea that some people who are right on the cusp of a cardiac event and then they go on holiday where they eat a little bit worse and they start drinking a little bit more and they're maybe just not taking care of themselves over the 7-day stretch. And that 7-day stretch is the straw that breaks the camel's back, where the camel is their heart and they actually have a cardiac event as a function of going on vacation. And this article, or the health portion, reminded me of that, where it's this idea where you take a step back from normal life, which was work, and you enter this phase where you're just doing more R&R. Maybe you're not taking care of yourself as much. Maybe you're lying around a little bit more. And that when you multiply that over tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people, kind of like Paula was saying, when you look at a really, really big amount of people, that tends to have a slightly negative effect. And for some people, it'll be just enough to really lead to some bad health outcomes for them.
Yeah, we hear this story over and over, OG, to Jesse's point. Somebody that retires at 62, they're fine for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, and then they're not with us anymore. Like Jesse, I don't have the date on this, but I have plenty of stories of people that are this person.
Well, is that a function of retiring too early? Is that a function of not prioritizing health and well-being for the 30 years leading up to that early retirement? Like, I'm so focused on early retirement that I couldn't be bothered to go to the doctor and get my cholesterol checked. There is obviously, the sad truth of the fact that, men in America in particular are very adverse to doctor's offices and, it's macho to not have to worry about that, rub some dirt in it, that sort of thing. I don't know that that you could say that the retirement did them in, although certainly there's the anecdotal stories of it happening. But whether it's a function of just taking less care of themselves, or being more sedentary, or just not having any purpose, I think Doc G would probably point to the fact that, when there's nothing else on the calendar, there's nothing else to live for. George Burns was famously talked about this, and they asked him why he's living so long. He's like, I'm booked through my 100th birthday. I got stuff to do. I got stuff on the calendar, and I think that also explains why you see that rash of people who are unhealthy or maybe, terminal, and then right after the holidays pass away, right? It's like, okay, made it through the holiday season. The family saw it one more time. I got through one more Christmas. Now I can die. It's like there's nothing else on the calendar, and that happens. If not only anecdotally. So I think it more revolves around purpose than it does, timing of financial independence.
Well, so that is the question, Paula, because we did a story a few years ago on Stacking Benjamins. Dr. Anna Corwin at UCLA had done some work talking about why Catholic nuns live longer than most of the population in the United States. And the reason that she came up with, the only reason they could figure out, was because these nuns had a mission until they died. They had a mission the entire time. There was no such thing as retirement. I had a population to serve. And she even cited a study where in a nursing home, half of the nursing home people that lived there were given a plant that they were told they had to keep alive at all costs. And the other half, the control group, were just allowed to do whatever they wanted to do. You already know which group lived longer. Is it more about purpose and less about work? Are we just planning wrong for retirement?
Oh, well, I think there are a few factors at play. I certainly think purpose is a major component of it. But as the article talks about, work naturally creates social interactions. I mean, a little bit less so these days, but now that we're in an era of remote work. But for many people, work has inherent social interaction that's involved with it. And that face-to-face social interaction, I think, is a major part of overall wellness. Uh, on top of that, just staying mentally engaged is a big part of keeping like cognitively sharp. So I think purpose is a component of it. Socialization is a component of it. The exercising your brain on a day-to-day basis, just as you would exercise your body, that is a component of it. And I think all of these components work synergistically.
Well, and let's go into one of the things, Jesse, that Paula talked about, which is this idea of socialization, right? There's this other thing that people do when they retire, which is they've worked this their entire life based on these goals. I want to move to X place. Let's say that I live in, I don't know, Michigan, and I want to move to Texarkana, which is where everybody wants to go, right?
Yeah,
But I don't know anybody.
goals.
That's right. But I don't know anybody in Texarkana. We see this all the time. I'm going to move to sunny place. I'm going to move to Hawaii. I'm going to move to some beach somewhere. I don't know anybody there. And now I don't have these social connections I used to have. How intertwined have you found that social connection is with a successful retirement?
I think it's especially what you just described there, Joe, is especially important where if the data I'm recalling is correct, it's that women do tend to have a somewhat easier time building new social connections, especially later in life than men. And just again, this is anecdotally what I'm about to say, but I can think of some individuals who, it's almost like they were born to be hermits and they don't mind the lack of social connection. In fact, they get plenty of purpose in life without it. Right. Maybe they need a triple espresso just to get the idea of talking to other people. But I think the vast majority of people, even if it's not, it doesn't have to be, what's that one number out there that says like the average human can maintain 150 social connections or whatever that might be. It doesn't have to be that, but even someone where you say, yeah, I could pick up the phone and there are 10 people I could reach out to for a cup of coffee or to go on a walk or just to see what they're up to this weekend. Like if you don't have those kind of connections or just that level of, relatively small connection, I could totally see it just being lonely and harsh. And that's something where I'm aware of the data of loneliness to morbidity. There's such a strong connection there.
But we make it worse, Jesse. I feel like because we set these goals without thinking about the power of connection, right? Wes Moss talks about how the average person who's a successful retiree has a strong group of relationships. Like in all the work that his team did, they've had strong relationships. They volunteer at with three different groups, and they officially belong to some nonprofit group like I don't know if it's the Elks Club or some Kiwanis Club, whatever it is. They belong to some group also. And these things, along with these more than hobbies, these super activities that they do, and they have at least three of them, that this really fulfills what they're talking about with sense of purpose. So I think getting back to the relationship piece, I kind of think that when we're setting our goals, sometimes our goal setting for retirement sets us up for failure. Like if I say, I'm going to retire and I'm going to move to somewhere where half across the country where I have no social network, I know nobody, I know nothing about the place, I'm setting myself up to lose.
I totally agree. I totally agree. Like I hear what you're saying. And I think part of what you're driving at, Joe, is that the average person pre-retirement isn't considering social connections as one of their primary goals to some extent, right? To some extent, maybe they just take it for granted, right? Well, of course I have friends, right? I coach youth soccer and I've got my work buddies and I know some people from outside of work and we'll grab a beer on a Friday night. Of course I've got my friends, not thinking of, when they move to Texarkana, are they going to hang out in your basement? Like, no, like you don't want any more people in the basement. So I see what you're saying there. And, how do we alleviate that? I suppose it's just doing the kind of things we're talking about here. Like you have to become aware of it pre-retirement and make it one of your priorities.
Yeah, I think this isn't a retirement problem. This is a pre-retirement, but where would you
Right.
ask for kind of thing. Oh, gee, you were joking earlier when Jesse was talking like bring it on when you talk about being a hermit, but I know you. I've been to your house and you've got this strong social network where you live. You've people around you, but when you first moved to Texas, you didn't have that originally. Did that affect your love of the area when you first moved there?
That's a really good question. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that it affected how we like the area or not, but it affected a lot of what we did. I remember because we moved from, a big giant house, or what was giant to us anyway, in a community with a golf club and all that sort of stuff, and we moved into a 3-bedroom apartment, you know, in North Dallas with a bunch of, 20-year-olds. Um, and we had kids and, that sort of thing. Like, we didn't connect with anyone in the apartment community. That was just, those definitely weren't our people. But we started a little bit of, relationship building with the parents from school. I think that's probably the easiest network because your kids are all friends or at least they know each other in the classroom. So that's probably where we started. And I don't think that until we bought our house, which was, I don't know, probably 15 months after we moved to Dallas, that, that we really kicked it off. In fact, the day that we bought our house and we moved in, we had the moving trucks that day. After that day was over and all the stuff was piled up, I sat on the front porch with a bottle of pre-made margarita mix. And that's a good way to make friends because my neighbor came out and he's like, "Hey, are you the new neighbors?" And I said, "Come on over. Look what I got." He's like, "Oh yeah, buddy." And all we had was plastic cups. We didn't have our stuff out yet.
That's great.
The fridge was making ice, and we were drinking margies on the porch, and became friends that way. But it wasn't until we were planted. If we would have been down in that apartment for another year, I'm not sure that we would have connected with any of those people. Even then, there wasn't, that wasn't really our social group in terms of who our friends were going to be.
There is one more piece of this that I'd like to talk about before the break, which is the piece talks about financial fitness. And what it comes down to, Paula, is that with pension systems going away, we're really kind of bad at math. And so we do this early retirement thing thinking I'm going to retire, very, very young, which is something everybody thinks that they want to do until they read studies like this one. And then, we reach 75, 80 years old, we start running out of money.
And that's why these shows are so important. That's why podcasts and I mean, I'm, not, and I say that it's a little bit of fun, but it's also quite a lot of sincerity. Like, financial literacy is unfortunately not taught in schools. I believe it should be, but it's not, and that's the world we live in. And so it is unfortunately up to the individual to read books, to listen to podcasts, to watch YouTube videos, to um, just to get the education that nobody is going to give them. There's unfortunately no other solution that I'm aware of that could do that other than like just that dedication to lifelong learning and self-education.
How afraid of it should I be though, Jesse? Should I, if I'm in my, let's say I'm 50 years old and I'm thinking I'm going to retire early, which is funny because I know some people in the firemen like 50, how cute. I want to go at 40, right? Or I want to go at 35. But let's say that you're 50. Should we be concerned that we don't have the math right?
Yes, you should, in my opinion. I mean, concerned is the operative word there because it's like, well, what do you mean concerned? How concerned should you be? Should it be something that you're checking twice, especially at age 50? I would say yes, because at least in my mind, or the way I approach it is, the longer that retirement timeline is, the higher the probability that if you have an error in your math, it is going to come to the surface. Right.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense, or at least I hope I explained it well. And I mean, an example, as you're kind of posing the question, I thought about someone who I know their story. It's a couple that's been retired for about 10 years. Granted, they're a little bit older. They retired at maybe a more traditional, like age 60. And they've basically been living on the 10% rule for the last decade. and their portfolio is
Easy to
exactly where
do.
it was 10 years
Easy
ago.
to
Right.
do in the last decade.
Exactly. And when they showed me some of their numbers, my immediate thought was, oh my God, like they are, it's almost like, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. Cause on the one hand, they've gotten to live this pretty amazing lifestyle over the last 10 years because the market has cooperated with them. But I'm worried that has set their mindset in a place where the next 10 years, where who knows what's going to happen, are they going to be able to adjust when they need to? I'm a little worried about that. But getting back to your question, Joe, yeah, if someone wants to retire at 50, 45, 40, I definitely think they need to pay extra attention to whatever mathematical assumptions they're making because they've got a long time ahead of them for something to potentially go wrong.
Man, I mean, I think about, I've been watching, I talked about this on Wednesday's show, but I saw this woman's video on YouTube. What caught my attention was A, the title, which I'll get to in a second, but B was the fact that 500,000 people watched this video. And there were so many positive comments about finally somebody telling us the truth. She's retiring in her early to mid 50s with $500,000. And I thought, based on this piece, when you look at A, the math of retirement, B, the strain, you know, I mean, this piece goes so much into fitness and health and about how our health gets worse. Imagine what role does stress play? Like when you're trying to navigate a $500,000 retirement OG for 40 years, like stress, that is a stressful place to be. I don't know that I would wish that on anybody.
Yeah, and to be clear, you're not saying that $500,000 isn't a lot of money. You're saying $500,000 doesn't turn into a lot of income.
Correct.
Over that long period.
And when you're trying to stretch, and when you're trying to stretch it out by bragging to everybody that you did it early, right? Yeah. And it truly smacks of bragging that you did it early. You somehow picked the lock on how to do this. And then I watched the entire video. She hasn't picked anything except picked a date to retire and said, I'm going today. And I cross my fingers, hope it continues.
Right. And that's the frustrating thing, obviously, that the five of us know here is we can kind of see the future. That's I feel like that's one of my superpowers is, you know, we've been on this journey so many times with so many people that I don't know that I have the best way to do it, but I know the path that's the most well-worn. And I can foresee what struggles might happen, you know, and Jesse, like you're talking about with the family that's living on all of their growth, which is an easy thing to, you know, to fall into. And you go, well, that's great. Why would that be bad? And I have the exact same story, only I have the story of what happens on the back end of that, because that was me starting my career in 1999 and inheriting or starting to work with a couple who for 1999 money had insane amounts, over $1 million, and lived every year on 120K. And they were living the high life, you know, in 1999 on $10,000 a month, because why not? Market's up 10% every year. This is easy.
Duh.
This is easy to do. And then it took 1 year, AKA 2001, for that to kind of come tumbling down. Well, it's only 1 year. Well, actually, it was 2002 also. Well, it was only 2 years. It was most of 2003 also. You know, and so we see that as, you know, from Paula's perspective of, or what she said about education and literacy, it's like most people look at the dollars and say, oh my gosh, $500,000 is a lot of money. And it is. $500,000 is a lot of money. What all of us know is, like, if you would just keep your foot on the gas one more cycle, right? That 500 turns into $1 million and you're good. Or the $1 million turns into 2 and you're good.
That's all she needs, literally. Like one more turn of that screw.
Can I get you to hang out? You're 52 and it's different. And it would be different if you were 71 with 500,000. Right? That's a different
100%.
51,
Absolutely.
52 with 500,000. You're going, I get it. You know, guess what? You don't get to retire early because you didn't do this stuff from 22 to 52. That's okay. It doesn't make you a bad person. Just that's not what's going to happen here. You're going to work 7 more years.
So I'm going to, in the second half of this discussion, I want to address the premise of this piece. Is this truly the case against early retirement? Do you go, yeah, probably shouldn't retire early, probably should keep working longer? Or if you think that we should retire early, how do we get that financial plan right? What are the pieces that we need to add in? We're not going to solve all those questions in 25 minutes, but what we will do is, and OG, I love your point. We've all helped a lot of people achieve a lot of goals over the years. And so we're going to dive into that knowledge base and we're going to pick out some of the things we see a lot of people miss. But before we get there, at the halfway point of every Friday show, we have this amazingly ridiculous year-long trivia competition between our three frequent contributors, OG, Paula, and Jesse. And we are 1 week in. And guess what, OG? You weren't here last week. Doc G sat in for you from the Earn and Invest podcast. And we thought for sure, Doug, that with Doc G as the ringer who never wins a trivia question, like we could count on Jesse and Paula to get this right.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, guys. Way to totally just skin your forehead on the pavement last week.
Doc G wins for OG in week one. So it is OG 1, a familiar position, and Paula and Jesse with 0. That means based on last year, Paula gets to guess last. Paula, you want to guess someplace else other than last? Because that doesn't seem to be working.
No, I'll stick with last. I'll stick with guessing last.
All right, Paula's guessing last. Jesse's in the middle. OG's going first. What's on the docket today, Doug?
Well, hey there, stackers. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug, and today is the day we say goodbye to the most wicked month of the year, January. Cold, gray, slightly depressing. I mean, what's not to love? But hey, February's here to save the day with more cold and more gray. Wicked indeed. Speaking of wicked, that movie was a box office smash last year, raking in over $700 million so far. That's roughly, now let me count, just under 700 million more than I'm being paid to hang out with you guys right now. I got to get a raise. But as Joe's mom always says, money can't buy happiness, but it sure can buy better insulation for the basement. Now get back to work. She always says that. Let's ask a question about the music of Wicked, shall we? In the musical, Stephen Schwartz references, plays with, and mimics the classic song Over the Rainbow throughout the play. In fact, in the song, The Wizard and I, how many of the song's opening notes, while in a different tempo, are the same opening notes from the older classic song from The Wizard of Oz? You guys got that?
My favorite for people not hanging out with us here on YouTube is watching Jesse and Paula put their hands over their eyes. Like, oh God.
I'm requesting that you redo all that. We had a loud thing that just happened in our house, and so I was distracted.
Okay.
Sorry.
So I'll start with let's ask a question.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. This is good because I'm guessing everybody needs to hear this again just to figure out what the hell the question actually is. 3, 2, 1. Let's ask a question about the music of Wicked, shall we? In the musical, Stephen Schwartz references, plays with, and mimics the classic song Over the Rainbow throughout the play. In fact, in the song The Wizard and I, how many of the song's opening notes, while in a different tempo, are the same opening notes from the older classic song from The Wizard of Oz? I'll be back with the answer right after I see what a flight from Topeka to Oz costs. There must have been a better way than a tornado. Jeez.
You do think that's probably the worst way to get anywhere, isn't it?
Via tornado?
Via tornado.
It's an adventure,
yes.
But yeah, it's
whole different, whole different thing. So OG, the music of Wicked in this song, The Wizard and I, how many of the first notes are the exact same first notes from Over the Rainbow?
I just got to pick a number. I'm going to say that 7.
7, and that's just random.
It's as good of a guess as I can muster. So one might argue quite random.
Jesse.
If I play out the first, I'm going to call it the first stanza of Over the Rainbow in my head, I think there's 23 notes in it. So I'm going to say 23.
23, and not random. Actually gives us a reason why. OG, he has the method behind the madness. Paula was like counting on her fingers earlier.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know every lyric to The Wizard and I. It's
No.
one of my favorite songs, but I never realized that it had any kind of mirroring with Over the Rainbow.
Nor did I.
Yeah.
Wicked is my favorite story, but I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, can I throw in some trivia about Wicked?
Oh, give us some Wicked trivia.
Some Wicked trivia. So the name Elphaba comes from L. Frank Baum, who is the author of The Wizard of Oz.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That is really cool.
Yeah. It was written by Gregory
0 points,
Maguire.
though.
Mhm. I
0
know.
points.
Okay. So I love that song so much. Never realized it had any kind of mirroring to Over the Rainbow. I'm just going to take the over and guess 24.
24. So we have 7, 23, and 24 notes. Who's right? We're going to find out in just a minute. OG, you opened up this shindig by saying 7 notes. Jesse and Paula both think maybe it was a few more than that. What do you think?
I mean, I basically have whatever 23 minus 7 is, and all the downsides. So 16 to. It depends on the definition of like opening note. I mean, I don't know what that meant. I was
Literally opening notes, beginning of the song.
I mean, but where does the opening end and the non-opening begin? I don't know. I mean, I counted the Somewhere Over the Rainbow having 10 opening notes, like the first line. So, not the whole verse. Maybe it's just the first. I don't know.
Well, Jesse, you said 23. Are you whistling right now, Jesse?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, you feeling good with 23 now that Paula took the over?
I mean, I feel good that there are 23 notes in the first stanza. I have no idea if what's the song? The Wizard and I?
Yeah.
I should know the musical better, but I don't. So I have no idea if my numbers. I don't feel good to answer your question, Jeff.
Paula, you're looking pretty confident.
No, I'm not. I just because I echo what they both said. I don't totally know what opening notes means. What is an opening note? I'm not versed in music theory, so
I think generally any music theory book will tell you it's the first notes.
But where does the first end and the non-first begin?
Well, it's just the divergence that the song then goes on its own. But for a while, it's the same exact notes. But then it goes off and does something different. So the first note that's not the same would be the one we don't want. So, All right. Well, we've ruminated on this. By the way, a different question. The one that we've my callbacks, Ninja, Paula. The question that we thought about doing, but that we thought might be way too much in OG's wheelhouse because he's such a fan of Wicked, was how many books were there in the original series? Did you know that one, OG?
It's an odd number.
We should have done that one, Doug.
No.
We should have gone with that one.
Is it 3? Or is it
There was 4. There were 4.
Okay.
But anyway,
odd number. It's like literally an even number. Okay.
What is the answer? Who's winning this thing, Doug?
Hey there, stackers. I'm wickedly underappreciated and the guy who's still waiting for my flying monkey delivery from Amazon Prime, Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug. Let's get to the good stuff. How many books are in the Wicked series by Gregory Maguire? Well, first, a little backstory. Maguire's first book, Wicked, The Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West, came out in 1995 and became an instant classic. It made us rethink everything about Oz. Like maybe Glinda wasn't so good after all, and maybe that flying house was less of a miracle and more of a zoning violation. The book was so popular, it got turned into a Broadway show that's grossed over $1.4 billion to date. That'd be enough to buy me a lifetime supply of flying monkeys that I could use to fly the heck towards some winning trivia answers.
Yeah, let's do an answer.
Yeah, fun fact, those flying monkeys, they totally unionized. So how many notes did Stephen Schwartz use in the Wicked's The Wizard and I that matched the original Over the Rainbow? Well, I can tell you this. It was 17 notes less than what Paula guessed, 16 notes less than what Jesse guessed, and exactly freaking 0 less than what OG guessed, because the answer is 7.
Unbelievable.
Making OG our stupid winner. Congratulations. Jerk.
Wow.
Jesse, do you want to talk to him about getting it right on? Would you like to ask him about getting the number?
Have some more espresso there.
What's the intro for Wizard and I? Is it the opening with its Alphaba acapella, that little bit? Or
yes.
Maybe not.
Yes. And it is, by the way, somewhere over the rainbow. 7.
So 7. Yeah.
Yes. I forgot
7.
Over they do is 2.
Is a unique note.
Yeah. See, so I got that part, but then I figured the next part of that was also included, and I got to 10, and then I figured it wasn't exactly.
When you said 7, Doug, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah. You even said that was just a random guess.
Well, just because he wasn't giving us any information about it, or did it
next time clear? Just go like, forget it, we're done.
Jesse, Paula, we don't need a guess. Probably could have done that. Well, you know what? That would have given us more time for the second half of this discussion, where we're going to talk about just this premise. Paula, in this piece, the authors at the Wall Street Journal make a case against early retirement. Would you make that same case given all this data?
Well, so the first thing I would say, and we should probably establish the definition of the word retirement, because if we're defining the word retirement as the permanent and irrevocable cessation of income, that is a pretty high bar.
Whoa.
Right?
A lot of words.
Wow. Are we in Russia? We're not in Russia, are we?
But if we're defining retirement as leaving your primary career or your primary occupation and transitioning to maybe you sabbatical for a while, and then maybe take on a little bit of part-time work, a little freelance, you kind of gig work, but only in things that seem fun and interesting, or you do some nonprofit stuff, a little volunteering, like if we're essentially talking about a well-funded career shift in which you move to more flexible and maybe part-time or flexible time work, all right, that's a very different story, because then you are still collecting an income, at least sporadically. Not as much of one, not as consistent of one, but it's a very different story.
Jesse, do you agree?
Do I agree with Paula, or do I agree with the article sentiment?
Do you agree with Paula's assessment?
Yeah, I agree with Paula's assessment. Yeah, for sure. And when you originally posed the question, Joe, I thought to myself, like, I need a comparison here. I need a way to explain the logic of the article. And my comparison is, maybe this wasn't true for you, but if you go to college, your alcohol consumption will increase, and that's bad for your health, and it leads to some bad health outcomes. So you might not want to go to college. And it's like, well, hold on a second. Even if that were a true statement, like completely logical, I'm now armed with the idea that maybe I need to go to college, and maybe I need to be careful not to drink too much alcohol to avoid the outcome that the average person tends to suffer. Because that's really what the article is saying. The average person who retires early, based on this particular data set, seems to have some adverse outcomes. Okay, now that I'm armed with that knowledge, I'll do exactly what we've been talking about in this episode, try to make sure I don't suffer any of those adverse outcomes. And it's, at least for me, it's not going to change my mind as to whether I or the people who I communicate with should be retiring early. I don't see the connection there.
Do you think then, OG, that early retirement just has like a big caution sign in front of it based on today's discussion, even beware what you ask for?
Well, I do think so, and it really revolves around a couple of different things. It's obviously the money aspect of it. It's making sure that you have an incredible margin of safety, because it's very difficult, no matter what people think, to go back into the workforce with a big gap in your work history. Not because of the gap, but because of the fact that you lose those connections, you lose that network, generally speaking, and your skills suffer if you don't use those tools a lot. You're gonna get left behind. So that's really not a great fallback option that you can have. So I think you have to front load that. Either you front load it with margin of safety with dollars, or you just say, I'm going to have to work a couple extra years. 53 is also early. 55 is also early compared to the averages, so to speak.
Sure.
I think the other piece of it is that you have to have something to do. If you picture financial independence time or retirement time as, I'm going to sit by the pool and sip margaritas and I'm not going to do anything, then a lot of those negative effects are going to manifest themselves, whether it's health issues, societal issues, your friendship group. Like, nobody wants to hang around with somebody who doesn't do anything. That's not a fun way to spend your week with your friend or whatever. You want to do things, you want to go hiking or golfing or cycling or whatever, right? Do your thing. It doesn't have to cost money. And I think, like you said, in your observation or Wes Moss's observation, be a part of a community. Be a part of something that gives you a purpose or something to look forward to on a daily or weekly basis, to give you a reason to get out of bed. My bed is ultra comfortable and I love it. But
yeah, I want
seeing you guys is a great reason to get up every day.
Well, thank you. We'll take that as a nice compliment. I want to dive into that a little more, because in Christine Benn's new book, Paula, in the very first chapter, she talks to a guy who's an annuity expert, and not about annuities. She talks to him about what a successful retirement's all about. And he starts talking about how you need to OG's point, you need to treat retirement the same way you treated your job. You get out of bed at a set time, you have a mission, just the mission has changed.
Mhm.
I feel like, based on this conversation and based on this piece, and I love, Jesse, I love your analogy on this front about you may not want to go to college. Man, maybe we're just doing retirement planning all wrong. Like, maybe we really need a deeper dive into what makes a successful retirement and how do I set up that before I go.
Right. Yeah. What I absolutely love about Christine Benz's book is the focus on intentionality, because it's so, if I take a week off of work, I don't necessarily have to be intentional about that week, because heck, it's a week. And sometimes it's nice to just, you know, be Garfield the cat for a week, right? Um, but when we're talking about something that becomes a permanent lifestyle that's ingrained with habits, we have to be intentional. And oftentimes throughout our lives, school is an external structure that forces that kind of intentionality. Work, particularly if you're not a remote worker, if you have to actually put on pants and leave the house, um, and show up at a specific time, like, work is an external structure that really forces us to be deliberate with how we spend our schedule. And so for many people, retirement is their first experience managing their own schedule for any prolonged period of time. So it doesn't surprise me that a lot of people are not that good at it, because they've just never done it before. It's not that they're not skilled. It's just it's new. It's
But
absolutely
also there's
new.
but you're also giving some caution there, like, stop treating it like it's going to be just a vacation.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And so that's the risk, because the stakes of wasting a vacation are quite low.
What do we need to add, Jesse, then into our financial plan if we're considering this, if we're not there yet, that maybe we're not doing right now in our financial plan?
That's an interesting question. I mean, I guess I don't know if this exactly answers it, but a lot of people think of their financial plan as purely numbers, and it's very objective. There's not much subjectivity to it. So, I mean, I think it would behoove anybody to think of some subjective aspects of their financial plan, because really think of it more as a life plan. It's a retirement plan, and the finances are a really big important part of that, but there's other parts of it too. So some of it's just the reframing, maybe from a financial plan to a retirement plan or a life plan. But even then, if you do only want to think about the financial side of a financial plan, the numbers, the objective side of it, I think it can help to bake in some wiggle room when you realize some of the stuff that Paula and OG have been saying. That like, oh, maybe this isn't exactly what I want, and maybe for me to actually feel fulfilled, to have some purpose, to want to put on the pants every day, I'm going to have to go out and do something. And that doing something is going to cost me a little bit more than I anticipated. And it'd be pretty nice to have that wiggle room already baked into the plan I've put together.
So a question for OG and Jesse, I'd love to get your take on this in your financial planning firm. Do we need to, in the financial planning industry, OG, then if somebody's putting together a financial plan and it has some of these cautions not built into it, like I'm going to move into a part of the world where I don't have any support network, or I haven't really given enough thought to how granular I should think about my days, or I am treating it like a vacation. Should financial planners be calling that out, going, yeah, in the past, I haven't seen this work the way that I would hope?
Well, I guess the way that I've experienced it is probably a good word, is when I hear people say things that are really silly, like, I'm going to play golf every day, and that's kind of a common, I can't wait to retire and play golf every day. I immediately jump on that and I'm like, go do that and report back. Go tell me just tell me if that's really what you're going to do, because it's hard to play. I don't know. I'm just not that good, but the professional golfers talk about how hard it is on their bodies and their, it's not an easy thing to do. And okay, so you go do it. So what did you do from noon until 7 every day then? If you played golf from 8 until noon, okay, I can accept that. I mean, it's a stretch that you're going to play every day, but what are you going to do from noon till 7? Sit by the pool and drink margaritas. It's like, and you'll do that for a while. That's totally great. But I think that it has to involve more than, leisure activities. You have to have time for health and wellness. You have to have a time for spirituality, whatever that means to you. You have to have time for growth and development. You have to have time for your family, whatever that looks like, extended or immediate. And if you have all of those things, you're likely to have a fulfilled retirement, whether that fulfillment is going to be 6 months or 6 years or, 16 years or 36 years. And that's really the thing. At the end of the day, none of us know how many days we've got left. And if you live every day with a sense of like, okay, I'm going to live today well on purpose, to borrow a phrase from Doc G, I think, nobody can be upset about that.
It seems to me there's so many other things that I noticed just getting ready for this talk, like people move where their kids are. Again, they don't have any support network there, but they move where their kids are. That it turns out that is often a mistake, because the kids have, let's say that the kids have kids, the kids have a life, they have things that they do. They might want to hang out with you sometime, but they don't want to hang out with you all the time. And maybe they do, but generally they have other things that they want to do. Another surprising one was people are too quick to downsize their house when they retire. they quickly downsize their house, and then it makes it more difficult for the family to come and visit them if they decide to stay where they are, and they're on top of each other all of a sudden, assuming that you're living with another person. And then, or even if you're not, you don't have the room that you had, and now it's a less happy retirement. Do you think, Paula, the financial planning industry needs to do a better job of pointing out, hey, these are some things that are beyond the numbers that maybe we should get better?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that financial planning that encompasses life that goes beyond the numbers and encompasses planning a good life. That's really the point of what we're all trying to achieve here. So the more that can be taken into account, the better.
And here's the question, though, and this one, Jesse, I guess I'll give this to you, which is, in your experience, though, will people pay more for that? Because I hear what Paul is saying, and I think that would be phenomenal financial planning. But my experience in the business is people aren't going to pay you more money for that. They're going, oh, that's cute. That's so cute. But yeah, that sounds like fluff. Oh, hold on a second. You are muted. You were typing away and I could hear it, so I muted you.
My bad.
I put the child constraint on. All right, here we go.
The window lock went for you. Got tired of opening and closing the window too many times.
3, 2, 1. I wouldn't be surprised if most people fall in line with your thoughts there, Joe. But I will say there are some ancillary, whether it's services or questions you can ask, there's ancillary value that a financial planner can provide to their clients that, while maybe they don't charge for it, it certainly makes the relationship stronger, stickier. It increases the
differentiation.
Oh, totally. Yeah. It increases the reputation of whether it's the individual planner or the firm or whatever it may be. And I think it's kind of good that there's competition in this industry, and that competition is pushing people to think creatively about how can I add more value to my clients' lives. And I was thinking about the question that you posed to OG and Paula. I find it hard. It's just a delicate balancing act where I never want to dictate lifestyle choices to a client, or I certainly don't want to try to paste my own personal preferences on top of what a client wants to do. Oh, you want to spend $10,000 a year on horseback riding? I would never spend that much money on horseback riding. Well, guess what? It's not my money. But my job is to let them know some of the mathematical potential.
Still tell them it's stupid. I'm kidding. To all the people riding horses out there.
That'd be a fantastic. Yeah, that's dumb. Why do you want to do that? Whatever the goal is.
No. Horses, are they a ruminant? My job is to provide them some of the answers of the outcomes of those decisions, for sure. And then at times, going back to the whole gist of today's conversation, when it's applicable and when I feel like I know what I'm talking about, to cite either anecdotal data or actual study-based data that says, oh, that's kind of interesting. I actually know some stories, or I know some data about someone who uprooted their life, moved across the country to chase their kids, and had to build a new community in retirement.
Exactly.
Here's some things to think about. And that's some pretty powerful value add right there.
Just giving people the opportunity to know that historically, this is going to require a lot more planning.
Yeah.
This is going to require, people have stumbled over this, and man, I don't want you to. You want to move halfway across the country where you don't know anybody? Great goal. Fantastic goal. Hopefully you're not riding horses on that goal. I didn't know. Probably not. Now the horse lovers are going to come for me too. I think that's going to do it for today. It's interesting because OG, just over the last 30 years, just seeing where financial planning how much it has changed, and how much we get more and more into the behavior of this. And like Josh Brown from CNBC said when he was on the show, just how young this industry still is. We're still gathering data. It's only maybe 50 years, the last 50 years, that people have had, have this new exciting financial plan. And Paula, are you thinking about horse stomachs?
I am thinking about Jesse's joke of, are they ruminant?
I'm on this. I could just tell. I'm like, this is not that funny, Paula. This is not.
I'm still laughing at that one.
Well, let's laugh at what's going on at Afford Anything then. Why don't we transition into that?
Ooh. Well, on the Afford Anything podcast, let me pull up what's coming up. Look, you're catching me unawares.
Hold on. While you're doing that, let's go to OG first. First weekend in February coming up, OG. How did they celebrate at the OG household? February. Oh, brew.
No, not has any.
You had to say
that, but there's an R there.
Yes.
February. What are we doing this weekend? If we haven't found out yet, today is the day we find out 2 college decisions for my son. There's some rumor, we're recording this a little early, so there's some rumor that maybe the information will be released a week ago, so we might already know, but definitely today. If not,
that's exciting.
And this will be an interesting discussion this weekend. This will be the discussion this weekend of, okay, here's all the answers. What are we thinking? What do we got to do? What's the
to plan? That point, OG, while we're recording this in the last 2 days, my niece, Saffron, she has had 2 letters in the last 2 days being accepted to 2 great colleges and getting these fantastic financial aid packages, which are great.
Sweet.
Yeah. So good stuff. All right, Paula, what's happened at the Afford Anything show?
All right, on the Afford Anything podcast. So every first Friday of every month, we do our first Friday economic update episode. So we've got that for the month of February. We also have an interview with Dr. Margie Warrell. She writes about research-based in kind of tips and information to overcome fear whenever it's you basically, how do you develop courage? How do you develop, how do you overcome your fears and your anxieties in anything that you want to do? So that could be as an investor, it could be in your career. So we talked to her about what some of the science around being more courageous is. So all of that is on the Afford Anything podcast, along with, of course, every other episode with you, Joe.
Those are the brilliant episodes. They're fantastic. Actually, we do have a ton of fun answering lots of questions from the community that are all over the place. It's like a big potpourri. We never know what's coming up next on those episodes. But I want to get back to fear. I mean, fear is back when I was a financial planner, that was the big thing. I mean, fear stopped people from doing so many, nothing objective, just absolute fear.
Right.
That just stopped us, I think, from living our life so much. So sounds like a fantastic interview. Yeah. Jesse, what's happening at the Best Interest podcast, my friend?
A couple days ago, we released episode 99, which was another Ask Me Anything episode, which I think it's interesting. They're becoming both my favorite to record and also I think the fan favorites to listen to. So it's a good thing, right? That's a good combination to have.
Just more Jesse all the time. Is that what it is?
It's a little too much Jesse, but yeah, it's a lot of Jesse in one episode. And but that means that in like a week and a half, we are releasing episode 100, which I will tell you guys and tell the stackers here, it's coming with a brand change. It may or may not become the Better Interest podcast.
Probably.
No, it won't.
It
but
won't?
Slim chance. But yeah, we are rebranding the podcast. We are rebranding. So that's a little nerve-wracking, but mostly exciting.
It's just gonna be the Jesse Cramer show. Is that it? With a raised eyebrow?
I can't
gonna call it Cramer.
Can neither confirm nor deny. The Cramer Investing Podcast.
I think
back to the drawing board.
Oh, wait a minute. Somebody's already got that. Oh man. And that's at the Best Interest podcast. We're finer podcast, 99 episodes, episode 100, right around the corner. All right. That's going to do it for today. Thank you to all of you for hanging out with us. Thanks to everybody who hung out with us on YouTube today, watching us make this show. We had a great time. And I think we're going to have Doug take it from here, man. Doug, what should we have learned on today's show?
Well, Joe, first, take some advice from OG. Before you retire, make sure you've identified a purpose that will keep you pointed in the right direction when one day starts to blend in with another. That or just sit in the front porch with a bottle of margaritas.
That was my favorite lesson, I think.
Second, remember that little pearl of wisdom that Jesse gave us about the stuff we need to change in our financial plan before we retire? Well, Jesse, why don't you just go ahead and put a bow on that one for us?
Think about the subjective things, not just the objective numbers.
Wasn't it ruminate about the subjective things?
Okay.
Ferment on some subjective things first, and then move the fermented cud onto the second stomach.
Okay.
Can I get back to work here?
Oh, sorry.
But the big lesson, don't ask Joe's mom if she's related to the Witch of the West. No matter how many times she's watched Wicked, she'll still take it the wrong way. Ugh. Thanks to Jesse Cramer for joining us today. Listen to the Best Interest podcast wherever you're listening to us today. We'll also include links in our show notes at stackingbenjamins.com. Thanks also to
Wow.
I told you I have to say it differently because it's just getting old. Thanks to Paula Pant for hanging out with us today. You'll find her fabulous podcast, Afford Anything, wherever you listen to finer
I think it's
podcasts.
afford anything.
I just have to pick different words to emphasize. Thanks also to OG for joining us today. Looking for good financial planning help, head to stackingbenjamins.com/OG for his calendar.
All right. And we did it. Thanks, everybody on YouTube. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out with us. We'll see you again next week.